Hi, everybody. Welcome to Vet Inspired. My name is Dr. Maria Botinas. I am a veterinarian, and today we're going to talk about what you need in your pet's first aid kit. So let's talk about why your pet should have a first aid kit. I truly believe that everyone should have a first aid kit for their pet, for themselves. But sometimes our pets decide to do things that we don't really approve of. And right then and there, you do not have the capability to pick them up and bring them immediately to a veterinarian. But with a first aid kit, you can help some things while you're waiting to get there or on your way to the vet, or even some things you may be able to just manage at home. Now, everything that I'm going to list today is going to be in my Amazon storefront, so it's going to be right down in the description. You can easily go on there and choose what you would like to purchase for your first aid kit. So let's get into exactly what you should have in your pet's first aid kit. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is putting gloves in your first aid kit. And the reason for this is gloves are great, obviously, because you don't have to put your hands in the vomit, the diarrhea, the blood, or anything else that's really coming out of your pet at that point. So always have a box or a couple of pairs of gloves in the first aid kit. You can easily purchase them on Amazon. You can purchase them at one of the drugstores, and they're usually pretty cheap. The second thing that you're going to want to have is a water bottle, and this is basically to flush any wounds out. I know it's not the most ideal thing, but at least you can clean out some of the dirt if they say got cut from being outside and it's all muddy and stuff like that. The next thing that you want to keep in your first aid kit is tweezers. Tweezers are great to pull things out. I mean, like, let's be honest here. So a lot of times in the areas that have high tick areas, they're great to use for ticks. I will say, as a side note, if you do pull a tick out and the mouth parts are still present, you should still see your veterinarian to have them pulled out. On top of this, you should always have some sort of bandage material, like clean gauze. There is something called vet wrap. There is a human version of this that you can purchase, but I always have some of that. And basically, it's like a Band-Aid that sticks on itself, so you're not actually putting a Band-Aid on your dog. A lot of times you can even put a sock in there, because that can even cover and be used as a Band-Aid for temporary purposes. I tell people, whenever they put Band-Aids or something that wraps around legs or any part of their body, they have to be really careful, because if they put it too tight, they can actually cut off circulation. So a rule of thumb is 2 fingers underneath, so that way it's not pulling too tight around your pet. You should always have some medication for your pet. So if your pet is, say, has seizures or is hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, or needs daily medication or has heart medication, I always say keep like a week in the emergency box. Remember, it does expire, so keep an eye on when that expires, but it's always good to keep some extra pills. That way, when you are, at your last pill and you call the vet and they're like, we won't have it ready until for another 2 days, you still have the supply left over. It's also great for the areas that do have a lot of natural disasters and stuff like that. So you always have a little bit extra in the supply. The other thing is, for medications, I always tell people to keep Benadryl on hand. Plain Benadryl, not with the decongestant. Just as my side note, decongestants are toxic to dogs. It will send your dog to the emergency room. So just plain Benadryl. It can be generic. This is great for when they're having allergic reactions and stuff like that. If you want to know the dosage for your dog, call your veterinarian. Just say, hey, if I ever need to use Benadryl, what's the dosage for my pet? It is weight-based. So if your pet is still a puppy, know that what dose they give you at 5 months of age is probably going to be different at 1.5 years of age. I tell people to always carry hydrogen peroxide in their first aid kit. Hydrogen peroxide is something that you can use to help your pets vomit. And I am not telling you, this is not medical advice. I am not telling you to use this to make your dogs vomit, but it's always good to have on hand. If for some reason you do need this, you need to call your veterinarian, because there is a toxic level, just like many other things. When you give it, your pets can also aspirate, and I really would definitely not give it to cats, because I feel like they have a higher risk of aspiration with this than dogs do. So it's very important, to have it, but it's even more important to not use it until you call your vet. If your vet is not open and you feel that you need it, it's important to call the emergency facility and you say, hey, this is what's going on. Would I be able to use it? This is how much my dog weighs. And they'll be able to guide you from there. I always recommend every dog have a muzzle. Muzzles are not bad. I know people think that muzzles are bad because they only put on bad dogs. It's not the case. Any animal can bite, so muzzles are not a bad thing, because if your pet is hurt, they may bite because they are in pain when you try to do something that you're trying to help them. So I muzzle dogs, even if they are good dogs, but if they are in pain, I still muzzle them because it's a protection for you. And sometimes it almost acts as like a security blanket for them. So always find an appropriate muzzle. You want to make sure the muzzle fits. Obviously, if you have any questions and you want to ask somebody, is this the right size? It's important to ask your veterinarian. They can definitely show you and they can measure to see what muzzle is perfect for your pet. Some pets won't use the leather or the cloth muzzle. Some pets do better with a basket muzzle, and you can talk to your veterinarian and try them. Most vets, not all, but most vets have multiple different styles there, so you can go and see which is best for your pet. You always want to have an e-collar, and I know that like everyone hates the cone of shame. The cone of shame, nobody wants to put their dog in it. The dogs hate it, the cats hate it, everybody complains about it, but you want to know what? The cone of shame is like amazing, and I love it. The cone of shame is a great thing to do when your pet has an injury or is licking something or is doing something that you don't want them to reach it. And I know that people say, but they have the inflatable collars and stuff like that. Inflatable collars are very easy for your pets to get around. So the e-collar, the plastic e-collars are truly best. And while they are a pain, you'll probably end up with lots of bruises, especially if you have a lab or a golden, because they're so happy and they bump into everything. But the collars, the e-collars are extremely important. On top of this, you can also use it as a substitute to I say like a substitute maybe to a muzzle. If your pet gets very anxious with the muzzle on, you can put the e-collar on, because then you can work on the back end of your pet while your pet has the collar. So if they turn around because you hurt them, not purposely, obviously, but if you hurt them because they're in pain, it blocks them from biting you. And lastly, I would always recommend putting your vet information in there. I would recommend putting the hospital that you typically go to, the name of the doctor, the phone number, the address, all that in there. But on top of it, I also recommend putting in any urgent care or emergency hospitals in. And the reason for that is because when something happens, you may panic and not remember, who do I bring my pet to? And it will be right in there. On top of that, you might be like, what emergency do I go to? What emergency room? Is there an urgent care? All of that information should be right there for you. So that way, when things happen, and they happen very quickly, when things happen, you can easily open your first aid kit and you can pull the paper out. It has all the information written right away. The other thing you want to add on there, I always tell people, is put their microchip information on there. If your pet has a microchip, I highly recommend a microchip. Make sure, just as a side note, if you have a microchip, if your pet has a microchip, make sure it's registered with a company, so that way we can find you. So if you're looking for any of these products, you can, again, hop down into my Amazon storefront. I'll have a whole thing in there. It'll be under a list and it'll say pet first aid kit, and you can purchase everything right from there. Other than that, always check with your veterinarian if they recommend anything else for your pet first aid kit, because they might have more ideas that you can add there for situations. And of course, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and turn your notifications on, so that way every time I drop a video, you get a notification.